But in that struggle and in that question of God, I came to the realization I had to forgive just as God has forgiven us. And in that forgiveness, I also had to ask God to forgive me for denying him. And once I made that decision, my spiritual and my relationship with God just strengthened 10 times over. And as it strengthened, I had to rebuild my relationship with my wife, my friends, and many of those who I unfortunately wasn't that nice to. And those are things that's the reality of life, that we don't all walk through a prairie of daisies and smell like petunias every day. We go through struggles, we go through trials, and whether it means physical ailments, economic struggles, trials, spiritual trials, relationships, we all go through trials, and it's overcoming them. And just for me, it's seeking God and continuing to grow closer. So a lot of that stuff, I share stories online, whether it be blogs or on Facebook updates, but it's just a way that helped me recover in sharing my story. But it also, I believe, helps others to recover by listening to other people, to where it enables them to share their stories and to share their struggles and trials.
Talk a little bit, Scotty, about how your wife dealt with this, because, as you said, this isn't what you bargained for, or thought you were going to get, but it wasn't what she expected either.
No, you're very right, and that's what was so hard. Is she received a phone call from my good friend, who was also my company commander, my immediate boss, at 3:45 in the morning, and to hear his voice just shooken and just this austere, like strong, physically, mentally, just stud of a man break down, it hit home, and she realized, and she came to the conclusion, Scotty could die, and if he does die, she knew that I would be in heaven. Well, at the same time, if I did live, she knew that God would use me in an amazing way. But as the life and the reality of life hit home, her not knowing what I look like, possibly my face being disfigured or missing parts of my body, just because the updates are very, she's very unsure of the updates in which she receives. It was the faith in which she had, and she was that strong point. She was the strong point in my life, that her faith was in God and not in me. But it takes the reality, and it takes a spiritual person to understand that we're here on earth not for ourselves and not for others, but we're only here for God. And it's just that reality that enabled me to understand the importance of not looking at myself, not looking at my own life and how, quote-unquote, miserable I was, but looking at how I could still help God and help, be a missionary in this world. And again, it's that love from my wife, and I do miss the massages. That is true, but it's that love, that surpassing love that she continually gave me. But it wasn't through her own strength, but it was through God's strength that gave it to her.
Are you okay as far as the other? I mean, except for your vision, is that what else? I mean,
yes. So in the injury, I was partially paralyzed, the right side of my body, but that I started using my right arm fairly quickly, and it took several weeks to start moving my right leg, and then I literally had to relearn how to walk, relearn how to do everything. But right now, my eyesight is the only thing that I'm missing. Where I go on runs, I do sprint triathlons, I hike, I snow ski, I lift weights, I ride tandem bicycles, I do everything I once did before, just a little differently.
Did they one of the question related to the what happened to you there? So you woke up. You mean you were unconscious for how long?
I was unconscious for about 2 weeks. So my body instantaneously went into shock, just being knocked unconscious. And I do have very, very vague memories of being in the striker, injured, though at the same time they're not necessarily memories in which are, I understand or know. But once I got back to the combat support hospital and just the military and what we do and what we're trained on for life recovery skills are so phenomenal that I was in the hospital in about 10 minutes after the bomb went off. And that expedited recovery enabled me to live. But I did. My heart began to stop, and the doctors were right there to give me some, I don't know what it was, but get you going juice. And and then they pretty much instantaneously put me into a medically induced coma, where down in Balad, Iraq, one of the best hospitals in the world at the time. Most of the surgeries were done, and then I was flown to Landstuhl, Germany, and then back to Walter Reed, where they began to slowly take off the coma that I was in, and where reality pretty much hit that I am blind, and I will be blind the rest of my life. So it was hard, and it's tough when anyone goes through a traumatic experience, and it's also very hard when we make decisions in which lead to even worse decisions, and to come to reality that those are the decisions that we've made, and this is the life that we're living. It's tough, and it's difficult, but it's about recovery. It's about making sure our lives are always better than the other day, and just growing closer to God that I continue to push myself and others to do.
Scotty, would you say something more about the crisis of faith you went through? I really want to ask you two things about that how long you were in that crisis, and your wife, she's a woman of faith. How did she deal with, she's got all this reality now, a whole new reality to deal with, your blindness and your recovery, and now her husband is in this crisis of faith. What did that do to her?
Yeah, for me, I don't know the exact timeline, but I pretty much instantaneously knew something, something had happened, and it was traumatic, and I didn't, just the dealing with trauma, I didn't want to believe it, but then once it hit me, it broke me down, and for me, the injuries in which I had to cry, was definitely good in the recovery process, because it meant I had emotion. It meant I was still able to feel, but with that, it became now resentment, denial. I don't want this. I don't like this, and I don't want to believe in God. And just because the first thing I want to deny is God, the first thing that people deny are the people that they most love. And so for me, it was hard. And I remember one of my best friends coming in and asking me to say a prayer, and I said, no, I don't know how to pray, and I don't think I know God. And just that reality not only hit him, but my wife and my family and friends, square in the face that, my wife realized at that time praying for my eyesight was the least of her worries, because she had married a strong Christian man who was very morally and, definitely did the right things all the time. And she, in her mind, she was fine being married to a blind person, but she definitely had struggles being married to a man who has now forsaken God. And so for her, she went back to her room and just prayed for my faith and the healing, as did thousands of people around the world. And so for her, for Tiffany, my amazing wife, it's not that she took herself out of reality, but she had to take herself out of reality to understand that if we're only here for God, and if we trust in God, God will ensure that we all are used for His greater good and for His purpose. So in that, to live in the moment and to live and see how tragic and terrible our lives are, I was checking that block 10 times over. Like, as a couple, there was already someone depressed, and it was me. And in my mind, if I didn't have that love and that support and that resiliency that she provided, I don't know, and I honestly can say I don't think I'd still be here in the Army, and I don't think I may still be married. But it was that love and that surpassing love that my wife gave me, but it was through her faith, and it was through her not necessarily, she loved me, and she still loves me, but it was more so if she believed in God and trusted in God, she was able to take it bit by bit and not just take it all, at a time.
It sounds to me as if your faith, in a way, through the ordeal that you have been through, has grown deeper and stronger than it ever was before.
Oh, that's so true, and that's what's so awesome is it's when we're put in situations, we're put at life and death situations that we have to rely on something, and when we rely on ourselves, it's an emptiness. There's no umph to it. There's nothing behind it other than just ourselves. But when we realize that God is planning and orchestrating this amazing, life for us, the creation that He's put in front of us, that we can understand, and we maybe just have a small glimpse of it, but because that glimpse is so beautiful and so amazing, enables us to grow that much closer. And so for me, because I struggled and because I questioned and came to the reality, just as Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis and so many other Christian books who question the faith and who God is, it gave me the ability to realize that God still has me in this world for a purpose, but I have to choose Him, and I have to choose Him, and I have to choose a life for Him, and it's not just...
Scotty, unfortunately, we're out of time. What is your website again?
My website is www.hopeunseen.com, and I just really appreciate time with you, Ray and Tim, and wish everyone the best.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. We didn't get to... You got to get the book, folks, to finish. There's so much more to the story. With our guest today, Captain Scotty Smiley. The book again is titled Hope Unseen, the story of the U.S. Army's first blind active duty officer. Our thanks to Scotty and Governor Phil Bryant. Ray and I'll be back after the news with another few minutes, another half hour of today's issues. If you don't get us on the radio, you can get us on the internet at afr.net, afr.net. Take care, everybody.